that, and I think then we have an amendment to pass out from Senator Shane, if I'm correct.
Yes, Madam Chair, that is correct.
Great. So if you want to go ahead and pass that out, and I know you've kind of already given us an overview, and let's not start until all the copies are distributed, but did you want to share that again, or I'd like to hear the revisor too?
Yes, I would agree. Why don't we allow the revisor to go through this first?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So before you have a proposed substitute bill. The provisions start on page 2. In the first paragraph about third-party agreements, you'll see that a party is required to provide the court with any third-party litigation funding agreement within 30 days after the action is commenced or after that agreement is executed, whichever is later. And then if a party has entered into a third-party funding litigation, they have to deliver to all the other parties within that same 30-day time frame a sworn statement, and you'll see starting on page 3 the list of the things that are required to be disclosed there. So I'll let you read those. And then with respect to the limitations, those are still largely the same, just saying that just because of the disclosure that's made above, it doesn't necessarily mean it's admissible as evidence in trial. Not construed to require a nonprofit to disclose its members or donors, and then it won't be construed to modify the applicability of the other rules of evidence or the other rules of civil procedure. And then with respect to the Judicial Council reporting on and after July 1st, 2025, the courts now, because they will have the copies of those agreements, they are required to provide those to the Judicial Council. And then the Judicial Council is required to provide the party who provided the third-party funding litigation agreement to the court documentation that that agreement was received by the Judicial Council. The clerk of the Supreme Court will still be prescribing a form, and those reports will still be confidential under CORA. The Judicial Council would still be required to establish a committee to study the issue of third-party litigation funding agreements, and they would make a report of their findings to the Chief Justice, this committee, the House Committee on Judiciary, and the Attorney General. And that pretty much wraps it up. You will see, because of some of the changes that we made to that disclosure, talking about whether one of the entities that's going to receive part of the compensation under that agreement is a foreign entity. On page 11, we do have some new definitions that are added. The foreign country of concern, foreign person was in the underlying bill, so you're probably already familiar with that one. And then I think all the other definitions are largely the same, at least the terms defined are the same. So I can take any questions.
Thank you. Committee questions for the revisor? Not seeing any, then Senator Shane, any discussion on your motion?
I think I would simply state, Madam Chair, that I think that the proponents and opponents have both provided their input into this, and it seems that this is an appropriate compromise bill, and so I would encourage everybody's support.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second from Senator Titus. Any further discussion? Yes, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to echo Senator Shane's comments. I've been involved as this bill has transformed quite a bit from where it started at the beginning of last year. I'm very happy the parties have come together, and from a legal perspective, I think we've reached a good place, and I'll be supporting the bill.
Thank you. And I know a lot of work has been done and a lot of discussion on the amendment. So I want to thank the parties for working on that and bringing us an amendment that represents a compromise between interested parties. So if there's no further discussion on the motion, then you may close.
Close my motion. Thank you.
Thank you. You all have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion passes. We are back then on the Senate substitute for Senate Bill 54. Is that what I should be calling it at this point? I do have a proposed amendment regarding judicial council reporting, if the reviser could share that and the research as well. Perhaps I should just still call it, we're back on the bill, Senate Bill 54. So an explanation then from the reviser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this balloon is drafted on the substitute that you just adopted. So that's the language that we're working with now. If you look at page 4 of the balloon here, the Judicial Council study will be changing to July 1st of 2030. And actually, I'm realizing, sorry now, that I missed a bit of strike here. There's another portion that should be stricken in that subsection D, where we change that to January 1st of 2030, and then the words "shall establish a committee to" should be stricken, and it should just be the Judicial Council shall study the issue of third-party funding litigation. Sorry about that. And then you'll see after that sentence, the information, the language about the committee is stricken, and it's replaced with a requirement to submit a report containing its conclusions and recommendations to the Chief Justice, the Attorney General, this committee, and the House Committee on Judiciary on the topic of third-party litigation funding. And then there's a addition that the Judicial Council's report shall include a recommendation on the use of these agreements and whether future reporting on those agreements would be beneficial. And then on July 1st of 2031 and January 1st, 2031 and each January 1st thereafter, the Judicial Council will be required to report the total number of reports received under the previous calendar year, again, to those reporting entities. And I can take any questions.
Thank you. Committee questions. Senator Klemp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm curious to why we adjusted to 2030, just from a 2028. Is there that much work to do that we would drive it out 5 years?
So this amendment is another compromise between the interested parties, and I would think that with the increased time, it would create a better picture of what's actually occurring or not occurring in Kansas. And the date was changed, I see, from the month of July to January so that the report is submitted prior to the beginning of the legislative session rather than at and after the end, so that there would be opportunity, if need be, that the legislature would be taking a look at it. So if I have that correct, is my understanding from the interested parties. Yes, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In visiting with the Judicial Council earlier in the year about this, the intent is really just to conform more to what their normal report process looks like. So they were very supportive of this. For me, one of the key parts of this bill was to get that follow-up report so that we can really measure the need for this bill, but we need those data points, and this was just their way of aligning better with how they typically do their work. So I believe it's a good amendment.
Is there a second? Senator Shane. Any further discussion? Then I will close on the motion. You all have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion passes. We're back on the bill. So any further amendments or discussion? Not seeing any, then is there a motion on the bill as amended? Senator Shane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we move the Senate substitute for Senate Bill 54 out favorably from committee as amended.
Thank you, y'all. Is there a second? Senator Bowser. Any discussion? You may close.
I close.
Thank you. You all have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion passes. Thank you, committee. We will now turn our work to Senate Bill 244. And Senate Bill 244 was a bill that we heard on Thursday last week, prohibiting a compensated surety from making loans for certain portions of the required minimum appearance bond premium. And with that, then, a reminder from the reviser.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You'll recall last year you guys put in a minimum appearance bond premium of 10%, and then 5% of that has to be given up front. This would prohibit a compensated surety from making a loan for that initial 5%. Any loan obtained for the purpose of paying that initial 5% would have to be from a licensed lending provider, and no compensated surety would be able to be affiliated with or an owner of a lender who is making loans for that 5% portion.
Thank you. Questions? Not seeing any. Any discussion? Not seeing any. Is there a motion? Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move the committee recommend Senate Bill 244 favorably for passage.
Thank you. Is there a second? Senator Klemp. Any discussion? You may close.
Close.
Thank you. You all have heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion passes. With that, committee, those are all the bills that we're going to work before turnaround. We will have some bills being heard from the House next week when we meet again. We're not meeting the rest of this week, and we'll resume our work next week. So with that, then, the meeting is adjourned.